The desert wind howled through the barren hills, echoing like a ghost across a landscape littered with rusting machinery, skeletons of a forgotten empire. For decades, the mine was nothing more than a graveyard. Abandoned shafts, toxic pools, and a silence so heavy it swallowed the memory of the wealth once clawed from the earth. Investors had long since vanished. Families who'd bet their futures here were left shattered. By 2019, it was over. Or so everyone believed. Then, two men stepped into the ruins with nothing but raw instinct and an impossible vision. Freddy Dodge, a seasoned prospector with a lifetime of hard lessons written into the lines of his face, and Juan Ibarra, a mechanic whose gifted hands could bring dead machines roaring back to life. To the locals, their arrival seemed crazy. The mine wasn't just shut down, it was cursed. But Freddy and Juan didn't come to scavenge. They came to change the story. The first spark of hope came from the darkest part of the mine, a forgotten shaft sealed off after a collapse back in the 1980s. Official records said it had yielded nothing of value. But Freddy saw something others had missed. A subtle pattern in the rock, dismissed by most, caught his trained eye. He recognized it for what it was, a geological fracture that might be hiding millions in gold. To Freddy, this wasn't debris. It was a mystery waiting to be solved. But solving it wouldn't be easy. The mine was flooded with toxic water, polluted by decades of arsenic runoff. A death trap. Juan got to work, building a patchwork pumping system from scrap parts scavenged across the state. It was crude and loud, pipes groaning, engines sputtering, but after weeks of effort, the water began to drop. What was once a suffocating tomb had become solid ground. And that's when something strange happened. Freddy sent soil samples to a lab. The results were shocking. Microscopic gold particles, invisible to the eye, but impossible to ignore. A faint trace of wealth. A whisper that hinted at something far greater buried below. Word traveled quickly. Old mining families, the same ones who'd walked away generations ago, started returning, demanding answers. Rumors of lawsuits spread. Some said Freddy and Juan were trespassing on land that should have stayed buried. Tensions ran high, but the men refused to back down. They were sure the mine was hiding a secret worth uncovering. When they drilled their first test hole, the earth gave up more than ore. Pockets of trapped gas exploded to the surface, gas that hadn't seen daylight in over 50 years. The blast shook the rig and nearly cost the crew their lives. The air filled with the sharp stench of sulfur and rot, a brutal reminder that the earth doesn't give up its riches easily. Still, Freddy's instincts were dead on. The core sample from that drill stunned everyone. Thick veins of quartz, laced with gold so pure, it rivaled the most legendary finds from Nevada's golden days. This wasn't just a lucky strike, it was evidence of an entire gold system running deeper, richer, and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. But finding gold is one thing. Holding on to it is another. The deeper they went, the more hostile the mine became. Equipment broke under constant strain. But Juan, armed with nothing but a welding torch and relentless determination, repaired machines in the field that should have taken months to fix. Every repair bought them more time, more ground, more chances, more gold. And soon, chances turned into reality. Their first cleanup revealed gold worth tens of thousands of dollars. The gold haul was still modest, but it was enough to prove that the so-called dead mine was very much alive. Enough to catch the attention of speculators and mysterious buyers who seemed to come out of nowhere. They offered cash, equipment, even whispered promises of secret partnerships. But Freddy wasn't interested. He'd seen what greed could do, how quickly fortunes vanished when people started chasing hype instead of working with patience. He wasn't about to make that mistake. Then came the most unexpected twist of all. While scanning beneath one of the oldest tunnels, Juan's equipment picked up something unusual, a hollow space. At first, they assumed it was just an old blast void. But when they broke through the rock, what they found was far stranger. Rusted tools, decaying helmets, and initials carved into the stone. left behind by miners who had vanished decades ago. It wasn't just a chamber. It was a crypt of lost history, perfectly preserved in silence and dust. And yet, even that hidden vault held another secret. Under the beams of their headlamps, veins of gold shimmered across the walls, like stars trapped in stone. Freddy gently scraped the surface with his pickaxe, and the flake that landed in his hand gleamed with a purity that no lab test could deny. But this discovery wasn't just about the presence of gold. It was about the scale of it. The samples they pulled from that chamber showed gold grades so high, they bordered on the unbelievable, as if the mine itself had been holding back its true riches, waiting for the right hands to wake it up. But every breakthrough brought new danger. The deeper they dug, the more fractured the ground became. Cracks ran like scars through the tunnels, ready to collapse at the slightest shake. And buried within the rubble lay a deadly relic from the past. Sticks of old dynamite, sweating, unstable, and potentially lethal. One wrong step could turn everything into dust. Juan, crawling through the tightest spaces with only a headlamp and nerves of steel, began marking each charge. With tools that looked more suited for a battlefield than a mine, he carefully diffused them, one by one. Every success meant they could keep going. Every mistake could have ended everything. Above ground, things were getting even stranger. Black SUVs started showing up, parked just out of reach on the nearby ridges. Men in clean clothes and with clipboards watched silently, offering no identification. Some claimed to be inspectors. None had any paperwork. At night, drones buzzed overhead, red lights blinking like predators stalking prey. Freddy had seen this pattern before. It wasn't just curiosity, it was surveillance. Competitors, corporations, maybe even descendants of the original claim holders, circling like vultures. The mine wasn't just active again, it was stirring up a storm. But the truth couldn't be hidden for long. When they processed their first full cleanup through the smelter, the gold bars that emerged were shockingly pure. The kind of purity that hadn't been seen since the gold rush days of the early 1900s, when fortunes were built and legends were born. Each bar carried more than just weight. It carried history. As if the spirits of the first miners, those who dug with pickaxes and dreams, were finally getting their due. But with gold comes chaos. The richer the yield, the more pressure built. Freddy knew they had crossed into dangerous territory, and that's when things shifted again. While resurveying the site, Juan picked up a new anomaly, deep beneath the deepest tunnels. A magnetic distortion, stronger than anything they'd seen before. It pointed to a massive ore body, trapped under a solid dome of ancient rock. No one had ever reached it. Maybe no one had dared. To touch it would mean drilling through unstable faults. It could cause floods, cave-ins, even earthquakes. But if the readings were right, this wasn't just another vein. It was the mother lode. Suddenly, it became a race against time. Water surged back through underground cracks faster than the pumps could keep up. Machinery groaned under the stress, overheating in the relentless dust. Juan worked day and night, his schedule collapsing into a blur. He rebuilt broken engines from scrap, forged new parts by hand, created solutions no manufacturer could provide. Whispers began spreading among the crew that Juan wasn't just a mechanic. He was a surgeon, keeping the heart of the mine alive with sheer will and mechanical genius. But even miracles couldn't hold back the storm forever. Local authorities arrived, demanding inspections. They claimed the blasting was putting nearby water sources at risk. Protesters started showing up at the gates, accusing Freddy and Juan of poisoning the land. And yet, behind closed doors, the offers kept coming. Foreign investors arrived with glossy contracts and too smooth smiles. Bankers whispered promises of vast fortunes if Freddy and Juan would simply hand over control. Every rejection Freddy gave only seemed to raise the stakes. His refusal to sell wasn't just about pride, it was about survival. And the mine itself seemed to feel the pressure too. One morning, without any warning, a tunnel collapsed. Just minutes earlier, the crew had walked out. The sound was deafening, like thunder trapped inside a coffin. When the dust finally settled, The air had turned thin and suffocating, barely breathable. But in the wreckage, something emerged that stopped Freddy in his tracks. Crystalline formations streaked through the rock, laced with visible, free-milling gold. So much of it, it looked as if flames had painted the gold directly into the stone. This wasn't just valuable, it was the stuff of legend. What they had uncovered was no longer just a mine coming back to life. It was a vault filled with secrets, some geological, others human, and some so deeply buried that they may have been hidden for a reason. With every core they pulled from the rock, the mystery deepened. The samples didn't just contain gold, they revealed silver, copper, and rare minerals fused together in ways that baffled even experienced geologists. This wasn't a typical ore body, it was an anomaly, something that defied categorization. And under the harsh glare of floodlights, Freddy stared at the veins, and for a moment, thought they pulsed, like veins in a living body, fighting back against being unearthed. Then the sabotage began. At dawn, one of the key pumps was found destroyed. Its wires had been cleanly cut, the casing smashed with what was clearly deliberate force. This wasn't just mechanical failure, it was an act of intent. The security cameras captured nothing but vague shadows moving between ridgelines, gone before sunrise. And the timing? Perfect. Just as they closed in on the richest zone of the mine, someone had cut off the very system keeping the place from flooding. Freddy immediately tightened security. But the message was loud and clear. Someone else wanted what they had found, and they were willing to fight dirty to get it. Juan didn't waste a second. He pieced together a replacement system in record time, fusing scavenged parts with sparks that lit up the tunnels like lightning. When the pumps finally roared back to life, they revealed a space no one had expected. It was another chamber, this one carved by miners who had clearly come before them. Faded notes, scribbled in charcoal, lined the walls, maps of veins stretching into the darkness. The handwriting matched records from workers who had vanished nearly 50 years earlier. This mine wasn't just a project anymore. It was a graveyard, filled with the forgotten footprints of past expeditions that never made it back out. As the drills pushed deeper, the stone began to change. They cut into rock that rang like metal. And buried within it, they uncovered old timber support beams, perfectly preserved and bracing tunnels that didn't exist on any current maps. Freddy's light revealed pickaxe marks older than any recorded claim. Clearly, someone had tried to reach this gold long before modern times, and their work had been buried, sealed, and deliberately erased. The realization hit hard. This wasn't just untapped wealth, it was lost history rising back to the surface. Then came the breakthrough. It sounded like bones snapping. The rock split apart, and what lay beyond wasn't empty. It shimmered. A hidden chamber, its walls layered with sheets of exposed gold, so thick and reflective they gleamed like mirrors. The crew stood in stunned silence. They weren't chasing veins anymore. They had stepped into a cavern where the earth itself had fused treasure into its very core. News of the discovery spread like wildfire. Phone calls began pouring in from international numbers, offering instant buyouts. Helicopters started circling overhead, too low, too often to be mere coincidence. And at night, gunshots echoed in the distance, bouncing off the canyon walls. Fear crept into the crew, but Freddy refused to abandon the site. Every gold bar they smelted became a symbol of resistance. And then, disaster struck again. Without warning, the eastern tunnel collapsed. The sound was a violent roar. Dust exploded outward like a cannon blast, and when the silence returned, half the chamber was sealed, cutting them off from the richest vein they had ever seen. Amid the chaos, something completely unexpected surfaced. A seam of deep black rock ran through the wall, threaded with gold so fine it looked like strands of hair spun from sunlight. Tests confirmed it wasn't just high grade, it was among the purest concentrations ever recorded. If extracted properly, it could be worth tens of millions. The danger, once a constant threat, now fed into a growing obsession. Juan's machines clawed deeper into the earth, tearing through layers of ancient stone as if chasing something alive. Sparks flew as drills ground against bedrock. Engines roared. The ground trembled beneath them as if something below was stirring. Every meter they pushed seemed to bring a new catastrophe. Sudden floods breaking through fissures, toxic gases seeping upward, cave-ins triggered by the sheer force of their own momentum. But the data never lied. What lay below wasn't just large, it was colossal. The ore body stretched well beyond the limits of any existing map, an underground giant hidden for generations. Then, one night, the earth groaned. A deep tremor rolled through the region, shaking windows miles away. The next morning, seismologists from a nearby university appeared at the gate. They demanded access and warned that Freddy's drilling might be disturbing a fault line tied to larger seismic systems. Their message was clear. This wasn't just dangerous mining anymore. It could trigger a regional disaster. Freddy listened, but his eyes told a different story. In his mind, the jackpot was already real, and the next cleanup proved it beyond doubt. When they poured the latest smelt, the furnace spat out a gold bar so heavy it bent the mold. It shimmered with a dense glow that pulled the entire crew into stunned silence. That single bar was worth millions. The moment it hit the cooling rack, the story shifted. No more speculation, no more theories. The mine was no longer just viable. It was a gold strike of unimaginable scale. But with every ounce of gold came new eyes in the dark. Strangers were no longer hiding. They were circling, watching, waiting. The tension became unbearable, heavier than the gold itself. The crew stood frozen, staring at that glowing bar like it was forbidden. Freddy was the first to move. He ran his fingers across its surface, the heat scorching his skin. He didn't flinch. This was proof. The desert had finally surrendered something extraordinary. But with every discovery came a sharper edge of danger. Just the existence of this gold made losing it a very real risk. Then came the most direct threat yet. One morning, a convoy of unmarked trucks appeared on the ridge, engines rumbling low like predators waiting to pounce. Men stepped out, calm and precise, surveying the site like a military operation. No logos, no names, just presence. Freddy reacted instantly. He ordered the crew underground. Loaders piled debris at the entrances, sealing them in. Above, the engines kept growling, waiting, watching. A siege with no bullets. Below, the mine revealed its final card. As drills broke into the fractured dome of rock, the mountain screamed. The sound was so violent, it shattered light bulbs and split helmets. Then came the water, sulfurous, steaming, and bursting upward in violent jets. The shafts began to flood faster than any pump could handle. But within that flood floated flecks of gold, visible, glittering, tumbling through the black water like sparks. The crew grabbed at them instinctively, scooping handfuls even as the tunnels around them threatened to collapse and drown them alive. Then, amid the rising flood, Juan's scanner went off again. A hollow space had appeared on his map, larger than anything they'd seen before. Despite the crumbling stone and rushing water, they forced the drills through. And suddenly, the mountain opened. The light from their helmets disappeared into a void so massive it swallowed sound. Inside, quartz veins dripped down the cavern walls, glowing faintly in the moisture-heavy air, as if lit from within. This wasn't just a deposit. It was a cathedral of gold, untouched, vast, unmeasured. The chamber stretched far beyond what their beams could illuminate. An underground monument built by nature over millennia. The discovery was biblical, but time was not on their side. The ground shook again. Pillars cracked. Dust surged like smoke. The cavern began to collapse. The crew scrambled to escape, clutching whatever samples they could carry. Behind them, the cathedral sealed itself with a roar that echoed through the mine. What little they managed to bring back was enough to confirm what they had always suspected. The jackpot was real, but it sat buried in a place too unstable, too unpredictable to ever truly control. Above ground, the mysterious standoff had ended. The trucks were gone. The silent men had vanished. All that remained were tire tracks spiraling off into the desert, disappearing into the horizon. But they didn't leave empty-handed or unnoticed. In their wake, something unexpected was found. A single crate, locked and marked with Freddy's name scrawled across the top. Inside wasn't a threat. There were no weapons, just documents, strange ones. Survey maps, land deeds, old mining contracts. Some were signed by companies that hadn't existed in decades. Others were centuries old, sealed with symbols no one could explain. Whoever left the crate knew the mine's history, all of it, far better than Freddy ever did. And then came the final blow. Just days later, satellite data picked up a burst of seismic activity directly beneath the mine. It was strong enough to be recorded by monitoring stations around the world. Official reports called it minor, nothing to worry about. But the people who lived nearby knew better. The earth had shifted. Half the mining operation vanished into a massive sinkhole. No one heard it collapse. It just disappeared. Dust settled, silence followed, and the mine was gone. Rescue teams arrived, but found no sign of the cathedral-like cavern, no trace of tunnels, no hint of the gold-filled vault they had uncovered. The desert had swallowed it all, as if it had never existed. Still, the rumors spread. There were whispers of gold bars that had already been smuggled out. Hushed stories of private auctions where just a few fragments sold for millions. Buyers, some speaking in riddles, hinted at veins that defied geology, that shouldn't exist at all. Then Freddy and Juan disappeared from the public eye. No interviews, no statements. Their names only surfaced in fragmented court records, vague sightings in distant border towns, and strange reports of hidden vaults carved into remote mountainsides. And somewhere, locked away in a safe that no one officially admits exists, is a single gold bar from the final pour. It's too heavy to lift with one hand, unstamped by any official refinery. Instead, it bears the mark of the mine itself. Its surface is etched with natural patterns, patterns that, under close inspection, don't just look like veins of gold. They look like a map no one has yet dared to follow.